Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala program in linguistics. I am Pramod Pandey, Professor, Center for Linguistics, Jawaharlal Nehru University. I am the principal investigator of this project. We are going to discuss today the module Transformational Grammar and Syntactic Structures. The module has been written by Professor K.A. Jayashilan, retired professor, English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad. Listen to the presentation of this module with the help of examples and illustrations as given through slides on your screen. Transformational grammar and syntactic structures. In this module, we begin with reviewing the discussion of phrase structure grammar with the purpose of introducing ourselves to transformational grammar. Our main concern is to present a general view of transformational grammar as it was presented in the early stage. Phrase structure grammar. How does a grammar describe the order of words and phrases in a language? Let us, in order to make our task simpler, look at only simple sentences with no embedded, that is, subordinate clauses. Such sentences are sometimes called kernel sentences. Some kernel sentences are as follows. The elephant slept. They caught the thief. He gave a flower to the girl. A sentence is traditionally divided into a subject and a predicate. The subject is a noun phrase and the predicate is a verb phrase. You see how it is written on the screen. The verb phrase can have just a verb, as in the sentence, the elephant slept. It can have a verb and a direct object, as in they caught the thief. It can have a verb, a direct object, and an indirect object, which in English is typically a prepositional phrase, as in he gave a flower to the girl. Now, combining the three sentences into one rule, we can write the rule as follows. VP, rewrite V followed by an optional NP followed by an optional PP. So the brackets indicate optionality. So we have a mini grammar of English. It has two rules. Rewrite S as NPVP, rewrite VP as V, followed by an optional NP, followed by a PP. Rules like the ones in 5 are called rewrite rules. Rewrite rules express an is-a relation. Thus, 5a says, a sentence is a noun phrase and a verb phrase. These rules are also called phrase structure rules, since their purpose is to make explicit the internal structure of phrases. We can represent the structure of a sentence also by drawing a tree diagram. Such diagrams are called phrase structure trees. Thus, the sentence he gave a flower to the girl can be represented as in 6 on the screen. The phrase structure tree has triangles which are written when we don't want to bother about the internal structure of a phrase. For example, to the girl, we do not want to analyze its internal structures, to and then the girl, the and girl. Notice that terms like subject, predicate, direct object, and indirect object are functional terms. That is, they describe the function of a phrase in a sentence. On the other hand, terms like noun, verb, noun phrase, verb phrase, and prepositional phrase are syntactic categories. The same syntactic category can have different functions in different sentences. For example, the thief, which is a noun phrase, is a subject in 1A and a direct object in 1B. 1A, the thief escaped, and 1B, the police caught the thief. Transformational grammar. A grammar which has only phrase structure rules to describe the order of words and phrases in a language is called a phrase structure grammar. Structuralist grammars were phrase structure grammars. But phrase structure grammars or PS grammars have a problem when faced with a pair of sentences like the following. They caught the thief. The thief they caught. The first sentence can be readily described by a rewrite rule for a VP with a transitive verb. But how do we describe the second sentence? In it, the thief is obviously not the subject of the sentence, which is they. Then what is it doing in front of the subject? Also, we encounter another problem further down. The verb caught or catch is a transitive verb which requires a direct object. But the direct object is missing here. So on the one hand, we have an extra phrase at the beginning of the sentence, and on the other, we have a missing phrase at the end of the sentence. If we try to write phrase structure rules to generate such sentences, we shall get into a hopeless muddle. Try drawing a PS tree to represent the sentence, the thief they caught. This is how the sentence will look like, as you see it on the screen. The fact is that there is no straightforward way to describe a gap in this system. For example, the missing direct object here. The problem becomes more difficult when we go beyond kernel sentences. We can get longer sentences like the following. The thief I believe that they have caught. The thief I hear that the newspapers have reported that they have caught. The distance between the extra phrase, namely the thief, and the gap after the verb caught can go on increasing. Theoretically, the distance can be infinite. The simplest way to describe a sentence like 7b that you have seen before, or the sentences of 8 that have just gone before, is in terms of movement. We can say that the phrase the thief was originally in the direct object position of caught, and that it's been moved to the sentence initial position. So I believe that they have caught the thief. Now the thief has been moved to the sentence initial position. The moment we say this, we have adopted a transformational grammar. Movement is a type of transformation. It transforms, that changes the original shape of a sentence. Two levels of syntactic structure. Note that the transformational grammar does not do away with phrase structure rules. This is important. We still need phrase structure rules to generate the original structure of a sentence, to which we apply transformations. Therefore, a transformational grammar has two subcomponents, a subcomponent of phrase structure rules and a subcomponent of transformations. The original structure of a sentence, the output of phrase structure rules, is called the deep structure. The deep structure of a sentence is its structure before any transformations have applied. Now, after the application of all the necessary transformations, we get the surface structure, which is the structure of the sentence that we hear. For example, in our sentence 7b, the thief they caught. In this sentence, the thief is in the direct object position of caught in the deep structure, but it's in a sentence initial position in the surface structure, which is where we hear the phrase. Thus, transformational grammar incorporates two different parts to it. One, phrase structure rules, and the other, transformational rules. And now we move on to standard theory. Why do we want to move phrases? There can be many reasons. Perhaps our sentence 7b is uttered in a context where we have been discussing the thief. So we want to resume the topic of the discussion. The movement rule illustrated in 7b and in 8b is called topicalization, when we put the thief at the beginning. It makes some phrase in the sentence like the topic. It gives it some kind of a prominence by moving it to the sentence initial position. But note that this movement has not changed the essential meaning of the sentence. So the police caught the thief and the thief the police caught have the same logical meaning. In the early days of transformational grammar, it was assumed that transformations do not change meaning, which means the deep structure contains all the meanings of a sentence. This stance led to the following theoretical claims. A, deep structure is the input to semantic interpretation. B, surface structure is the input to phonetic interpretation. So, meaning and sound. Deep structure is what gives us the meaning, and surface structure is what gives us the sound. The organization of grammar then was as follows, as presented in figure 10. So what you notice here is on the top line, PS rules plus lexical insertion, deep structure, semantic interpretation. Then transformations apply, and then deep structure is transformed into surface structure, which is related to phonetic interpretation. This view of the organization of grammar is known as the standard theory. The standard theory of the organization of grammar was what was proposed in the early writings of Noam Chomsky. For example, syntactic structures and aspects of the theory of syntax. Chomsky's syntactic structures, 1957. The transformational grammar revolution in linguistics can be said to have started with the publication of Noam Chomsky's small monograph, Syntactic Structures, in 1957. The main task that this monograph performed was to give a rigorous mathematical proof that a pure phrase structure grammar is incapable of describing natural language. It also showed that a communication theoretical model of language that was being investigated at the time, which tried to generate language in a left-to-right fashion by what is known as the finite state Markov process, fared even worse than PS grammars in dealing with natural language. While the main job done by syntactic structures then was to show up the inadequacy of some other models of grammar, the monograph is also remembered for making some very important grammatical analyses. For example, it separated verbal affixes from the verbs in the syntax. Why was this important? Now consider the sentence, John loves Mary. The verb loves is a single word, but as everyone knows, it's actually a verbal root with a tense affix. That is, love plus S. Traditionally, the job of putting together lexical roots and affixes is done in a separate component of grammar called morphology. In fact, the task of morphology is to make words. Syntax only takes words from the morphological component and push them together to make phrases and sentences. But consider the negative form of to and also its question form. John does not love Mary. Does John love Mary? Here, the main verb love has an affix. It's in its bare form. The tense affix shows up on an auxiliary verb do. The auxiliary verb do has no meaning. It is often referred to as the dummy verb. The only function of the dummy verb seems to be to support the tense affix, which has moved away from the main verb. How would traditional grammar describe the relation between the two sentences? That is, John loves Mary on the one hand, and the sentence is John does not love Mary, and does John love Mary? All that one could say was that morphology outputs a verbal form does, just like it outputs loves, and in negative sentences and yes no questions in English, if there is no other auxiliary verb in the sentence, we must choose does, and we must also choose the bare form of the main verb because there cannot be two tense affixes in a sentence. But this is only a description of the surface facts stated as a set of grammar rules. There is no attempt here at an explanation. In syntactic structures, Chomsky offered an explanation. Traditional phrase structure grammars represented our sentence to John loves Mary as follows. Instead of this representation, Chomsky suggested that tense is generated on a separate mode outside the VP. Now, this was something new and original. To generate the sentence John loves Mary, the tense affix must move and attach to the first verbal element to its right, as you see it on the screen. This movement is called affix hopping. As you can guess, affix hopping is a transformation that must apply in every finite sentence. So the tense S moves to the position following the verb love. Now in a negative sentence, the negation marker not is generated between tense and VP, as you see it on the representation on your screen. It prevents tense from affix hopping onto the verb. But the standard tense needs a verb to attach itself to. So the dummy verb do is inserted to save the sentence. And that's how you get John does not love Mary. From the sentence, John, tense S, negative no, love Mary. You get John does not love Mary. This transformation is called do support. So we have looked at these two transformation rules, do support and affix hopping, apart from movement transformation that we saw before. Chomsky's affix hopping rule applies also to auxiliary verbs. As we know, even a simple sentence in English can have more than one verb. A main verb plus one or more auxiliary verbs. Consider 13. He may see a movie. He has seen a movie. He is seeing a movie. A movie is seen. In each of these sentences, the underlying verb is an auxiliary. That's a helping verb. And the main verb is see. The auxiliary verb may in 13a belongs to a class called modal. This class includes the following members: can, may, shall, will, etc. There can be only one modal in a sentence. Two modals will make it ungrammatical, and the verb immediately following the modal must be in its bare form. If it isn't, the sentence is ungrammatical, as you see it on the screen. He can may see a movie. Wrong. He can saw a movie. Wrong. We use conventionally a star preceding example sentence to mean that it's ungrammatical. The auxiliary verb have of he has seen a movie also has a requirement. The verb immediately following it should be in its past participle form. If we say has seen. Similarly, the auxiliary verb be of he is seeing a movie has the requirement that the immediately following verb must be in its present participle form, which is an ing form. And then we have the passive sentences. The passive auxiliary be requires the following verb to be in its past participle form. This was seen. How should a grammar describe these facts? There are also other questions. Can more than one auxiliary occur in a sentence? And if they do, in what order do they occur? Chomsky's solution was as follows. He proposed that have and the n suffix, that's the past participle suffix, similarly, be and the ing suffix should be chosen together from the lexicon. He proposed the following structure for an English kernel sentence. Look at it on the screen. So the auxiliary has the structure tense, optionally modal, optionally have n, optionally be ing, and then optionally be n in that sequence. Note that have and the suffix n on the following verb are chosen together as one item from the lexicon, have plus n. Similarly, we have be plus ing and be plus n. The affixes here are tense, n, ing, and n again. The rule is affix hopping rule. An affix must attach itself to the verb immediately to its right. Now consider how we can generate sentences using the structure shown in 16, that is the representation we saw just before, and the rule 17, that is the affix hopping rule. We have the following options. Option A. Suppose we choose none of the auxiliaries under aux. Then we have only the obligatory element tense, for example, present tense. Now we can have the following derivation. Present followed by see a movie. So he sees a movie. If we choose tense and a modal, then we have he can see a movie. Now if we choose tense and have n, we get a derivation like the following: 20. We can choose tens, have n and being, and get the following derivation. Present have n, be plus ing, and then c, movie. So the n of have moves to the position after be, and the ing moves to the position after c. Thus we get he has been seeing a movie. Summary. So we have looked at in great detail the theory of transformational grammar as propounded in syntactic structures and as developed in later works such as aspects of the theory of syntax. We looked at phrase structure grammars, and we also looked at the transformational rules, and then we saw how in transformational grammar 2 levels of syntactic structure are important, and how with the help of transformational rules we can account for various processes and structures in languages that have not been accounted for yet.